Good morning, Algebra 2. We are going to be covering the hyperbola. And so there are two kinds of hyperbola. There is a horizontal and there is a vertical. And it's similar to an ellipse, but it's like an ellipse that's cut in half and flipped out. And so let's first go over horizontal. A horizontal hyperbola will open to the left and to the right. Its equation will look like the following: x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. X minus h squared is over a squared, y minus k is over b squared equals 1. Now, in a hyperbola, a squared will be the first denominator. Whoops. How can I try to fit denominator in here? Denominator. And our center is always at h, comma, k. I'm sorry, this should be, my bad, Friday morning, right? This should be a subtraction sign. Now, the only difference with a vertical, this will open up and down. You're going to have two curves. And the difference, you're still going to have a squared first. So b squared is here, and you still have equals 1. The part that changes, if this is vertical, if this opens across, notice the vertical will open across your x-axis versus a vertical opens across our y-axis. So in that case, our y value will be listed first. Foci are these dots listed on the inside. So these are your dots. And the foci will, we find foci by finding c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Notice it looks very common to our Pythagorean theorem. Our eccentricity is E equals c divided by a. And our asymptotes are y equals, depending on if it's horizontal or vertical, y could either equal plus or minus a over bx, or y equals plus or minus b over ax. They're really easy to find, however. So we're just going to jump right in. I'm going to do 5 with you. And so our lesson practice is on page 760, and so we're going to jump into part A. So I'm just going to find all the parts for each example. So we're going to graph x squared over, I think they didn't even square it for us, they just put 5 squared minus y squared over 4 squared equals 1. Now this could also be written x squared over 25 minus y squared over 16 equals 1. Sometimes they give it to us where it's already been squared for us, it's been simplified, and other times they leave it squared. Either way, I should be able to recognize that a equals 5 and b equals 4, because I told you that the first denominator always represents a squared. So a is 5 here, and the square root of 25 is 5. Now, because x is first, this is horizontal. Okay? Also, my center, since there is nothing near x and y, my center is at 0, 0. I now have to find c. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. So c equals the square root of 25 plus 16. So c equals the square root of what? I think that's 41. And the square root of 41 equals 6.4. So I've got A, B, here is C. So my eccentricity, I'm going to move this up, is simply C over A. So my eccentricity would be 6.4, over A, and then that becomes 1.3, so there's my eccentricity. And so now we're going to start graphing. I'll wait to identify the asymptotes. So again, my center is at, and I want to make sure I leave room for this graph. So let's see here. I might have to change my scale. To go by twos. All right, so here is my x-axis, here's my y-axis. So the number underneath x is a 5. So A is 5. And because it's underneath x, think I'm going to go 5 on x because they're paired together. So starting with my center, I'm going to go to the right 5 and to the left 5 because A is 5. Going back to the center, B is 4, so up 4, down 4. And I'm going to form this rectangle, and I need this rectangle in order to draw my asymptotes and my hyperbola. So the next thing I'm going to do is take a ruler or the straight edge of your notebook and draw diagonal lines that go through the corners of my rectangle. And those become my asymptotes. So this here and here are my asymptotes. And I'm going to find the equations. Now remember, these are straight lines, so my asymptotes are simply rise over run. So we went up 4 and over 5. And I could also, for this line, I went down 4 and over 5. So this line here has a positive slope versus this asymptote here has a negative slope. So my asymptotes are simply y equals plus or minus 4 over 5x. Now I'm going to actually draw my hyperbola. Now this is horizontal, so it should open in the left and the right. So from the dot on our rectangle, I'm going to draw curves that are as wide as my asymptotes. So your graph shouldn't be in here. It should be as wide as our asymptotes. So you're going to draw your curve all the way to those dashed lines and repeat that in the right. And so it should look like this. So let's practice this a couple times. I'm now going to move on to example B, if I can tear this out. All right, so moving on to part B. So they'd like us to graph y squared over 7 squared minus x squared over 5 squared. So first things first, y squared is first. So this is vertical. So it will open up and down. This equals 1. A equals 7, B equals 5, C will equal the square root of 7 squared plus 5 squared. So the square root of 49 plus 25, C equals 8.6. So there's A and B. There is C. My foci, totally forgot about those in the last example, my bad. So C is 6.4, so starting from the center in the same direction as your hyperbola, here would be 6, 6.4, 6, 6.4. So those are my foci. should always be inside your curve, kind of like a satellite and the ball inside. So it should always belong on the same sides as your hyperbola. So my bad for forgetting about that. I kind of just moved on. So I'm going to go ahead and label this so I won't forget. All right, so my eccentricity is simply C divided by A, which I get 1.2. Let me check that just to make sure. Yes. And I will do asymptotes once I've graphed this. So again, I'm going to change my scale to leave room because vertical means it's going to open up and down. So I need to leave room on my y-axis. And again, there's nothing near x and y, so my center is at 0, 0. So I have all these important pieces. So again, I'm going to change my scale. So 4, 8, 12, -4, -8. I'm going by twos. So here's y. This is x, 4, 8, 12. There's x. So my center is at 0, 0. Now, A is 7. So, but it's underneath the y-axis. So up 7, down 7. And then back to center, B is 5. So to the left 5, to the right 5. And I'm going to use that to draw our rectangle. And I'm going to connect the corners. All right, so remember, these are our asymptotes. That and this are our asymptotes. And so let's figure out our slope. I went up 7 over 5. Let me move this down. So y equals, I went a positive 7 over 5x, and this asymptote here would be down 7 over x. And so there are my asymptotes. Now, my hyperbola is vertical, so starting with the dot at the top, remember it should be as wide as our asymptotes. So let your asymptotes guide your curves. Okay, next, I just want to make sure I'm on the right page, sorry. And then my foci is 8.6, so up 8.6, right, almost to 9, and down 8.6. And so these little marks here, there's one focus, there's the other focus, but plural we say foci. So moving on to part C, it should provide us with lots of practice. So C, very similar numbers. They want us to graph x minus 5 squared over 7 squared minus y minus 4 squared over 5 squared equals 1. So first off, x squared is first, right? So this is horizontal. So this graph will open to the left and to the right. Second, I know the center is no longer 0, 0 because I have x minus 5, so that's a positive 5. Remember, it's opposite. Y minus 4, so that's a positive 4. So there is my center. Let's not forget that. A is 7. B is 5. It's the same numbers as last time. C is 8.6. Eccentricity is also the same, 1.2. And so I'm going to graph this, but the hard part is the center. I have to remember that my center is at 5, 4. Again, I'm going to change my scale because these are larger numbers. So here's x, here's y. All right, so my center is to the right 5, up 4. So there is my center. A is 7, so remember each box is 2. So 2, 4, 6, 7. Or if I'm at 5, 5 plus 7 is 12. So if I'm at positive 5, if I'm going to the left 7, that would put me at negative 2. Okay, and then my B is 5, so 2, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5. And so here is my rectangle. And then our asymptotes should be still through the corners. And they are dashed lines, not solid. And so I have my hyperbola, one curve on the left, the other on the right, because it's horizontal. My foci is at 8.6. So if this was 7, 8, 8.6. So this was 7, 8, 8.6, almost to 9 units away. And so there are my foci, my asymptotes. We went, in this case, this is kind of tricky. I want you to notice these are up 5 over 7. So plus or minus 5 over 7x. All right, let's move on to the last two, part D and E. So part D, they would like us to graph y minus 8 squared over 9 squared minus x minus 5 squared over 6 squared equals 1. So because y squared is first, this is vertical. So remember, it'll open up and down. My center is, remember, x value goes first, so 5, 8. Be really careful there. I know you want to write 8, 5, but 8 represents y. So there's my center. A is 9, B is 6, C is the square root of a squared plus b squared. So C equals the square root of 81 plus 36, which is 10.8. E equals C over A, so 10.8 divided by 9. And again, I get 1.2. And then I'm going to graph. So again, remember, this is vertical. My center is at 8 or 5, 8. So let's see here. I want to make sure I leave room for everything. And so 4, 8, 12, 4, 8, 12. This is y. Here's x. Negative 4, negative 4. Okay, so let's start with our center. Here's 2, 2, 4, so halfway was 5, 8. So there's my center. A is 9, so 2, and it's under y, and it's vertical. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Go back to the center. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. B is 6, 2, 4, 6. Each box is a unit. 2, 4, 6, but you're going from center to center. Then I have my rectangle. And then through the corners is my asymptotes. Let me unfreeze my computer screen because I believe it times out after 20 minutes. Okay, so here's my graph. Now again, this is vertical, so my hyperbolic curves should be in the top and bottom. My foci is C, so I'm going 10.8 from the center, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, almost 11. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, almost 11. So there's one focus, there's the other. My asymptotes, I went up 9 and over 6. So y equals plus or minus 9 over 6, or y equals 3 plus or minus 3 over 2x if you reduce it. All right, last one, and I'm bummed they didn't provide another one like this. I have to put the following in standard form. So 54y minus 9y squared plus 4x squared minus 32x minus 161 equals 0. So first things first, let's put everything in order. Noticing this says minus 9y squared. So you want to put the positive one first. So 4x squared minus 32x, those should go together, minus 9y squared plus 54y. And then the 161 doesn't belong to anyone, so I'm going to move him to the right. So this is what we should have so far. Now I'm going to factor out GCF. So from x is 4. Well, sorry, you're not really factoring out your GCF. You're factoring out your a term. So that leaves me with x squared minus 8x. Leave a space because we're going to complete the square. A negative 9. That gives me y squared minus 6y. Leave a space equals 161. Now we're going to complete the square. So wait, I factored out a. Now I'm going to complete the square. You take your middle term, divide it by 2, and square it. So I have a negative 8. Negative 8 divided by 2 squared equals 16. So I have to add 16 here. But over here, technically, I factored a 4 out. So I'm adding 4 times 16 to the right. I have to keep the right-hand side equivalent to the left. And this is technically 4 times 16. And so that's where I'm getting this. To complete the square here, my b term is negative 6 divided by 2 squared. That would give me 9. So I'm adding 9 here. But this is a negative 9 times 9. So that should be here, negative 9 times 9. So I'm keeping the left-hand side equivalent to the right-hand side. So now I'm going to factor my trinomials again. So probably that might be confusing. So I get 4. The factors of x squared minus 8x plus 16 are x minus 4 squared minus 9 times y minus 3 squared equals 161 plus 4 times 16 minus 9 times 9 is 144. So finally, to get this into standard form, I need the right-hand side to equal 1. And the only way to do that is to divide everything by 144. And then I reduce. 4 goes into 4 once. 144 divided by 4 is 36. So x minus 4 squared over 36 minus 144 reduced by 9 is 16. Y minus 3 squared equals 1. Now, you could rewrite this so it looks the way it has in the book. 36 is 6 squared minus y minus 3 squared over 4 squared equals 1. And that, sorry, this is a big one. That completes our notes.